Welcome to our first look at the second edition cards in the expansions Cornucopia and Guilds. This game was taken from a match in the Dominion League versus Earl. Before the match, we agreed to include one new card from the second edition cards for all 6 games. Different cards, of course. In this game, I selected Farmhands. Farmhands replaces Farming Village, gives you a card and 2 actions still. However, there is an on-gain effect now that allows you to set aside an action or treasure from your hand and then play it at the start of the next turn, your next turn. In addition to this mandatory include, 2 other cards randomly showed up from the second editions. One is Infirmary, which replaces Doctor. Now this card draws and then you may trash a card from your hand, and the overpay is similar to Doctor. For every coin overpaid, you may play your Infirmary that many times. Much more balanced trasher than Doctor. I approve of this replacement. The final card of the second editions is Carnival. Carnival. It replaces Harvest and it draws cards this time instead of giving you coin. Reveal the top 4 cards of your deck and then put one of each differently named card into your hand. Discard the rest. Now let's have a look at the rest of the kingdom. You have all the engine pieces that you would want. There's actions, there's draw, there's trashing. However, plus buy is missing. There's a bit of gain in engineer, but the plus buy is missing. And as is the case in games with limited gain, you generally want to target getting a consistent deck that can hit 8 coin at least 4 times to get you the 4 provinces, and then you can see how things go from there. Shaman is going to make that much more difficult because Shaman keeps bringing cards back from the trash pile. Thinning will be difficult, but I think it is possible with a combination of Shaman and Infirmary to get the deck under control. You may not have it as thin as you would like, but I think you could have it under control. Minstrel, for example, is an excellent village for clumping action cards together. So let's see how we decide to proceed from here. Procession, I should note, is a little bit funny here. Without Shaman, you would probably play with Procession, and then you can process your Infirmaries after they've trashed into Minstrels. Minstrels can go into Catacombs. You can trash Catacombs, and that also gains you cards. There's a lot of scope for Procession here. However, Shaman means that if I trash a Minstrel on my turn, my opponent can then pick up that Minstrel from the trash for themselves. Doesn't seem like a good thing to give your opponent good free cards. So I think we'll both avoid Procession in this game. Finally, the tireless trait is on Catacombs, and that makes Catacombs the superior draw card here. Without that, it is debatable whether or not you want Catacombs or Carnival first. However, tireless Catacombs means that that is probably going to be your draw card of choice. Especially with Wolf, then you will not get one Catacombs, you'll want to get multiple copies of Catacombs or whatever draw card you choose, either Catacombs or Carnival. Limited gains means you have to be very careful in your choices on every single turn. I mean, you always do, but here there's less chance to catch up if you make a wrong choice because of the lack of gain. Alright, I have 5-2, which is excellent. You know from Doctor games, 5-2 is generally a good thing with Doctor games, and this is the same for Infirmary, and you'll get to see right away how Infirmary works. I'm able to overpay by 2, costs 3, and then I will draw 2 cards from the top of my deck and trash them. The estate goes and the copper goes. That prompts a reaction from my opponent, and I understand it. Especially so because of the Shaman, it means an estate or copper goes back into their deck straight away. And they may not be able to trash on the first shuffle if they draw poorly. However, they do have 4 for and in an Infirmary, trashing an estate. I gain an estate from the trash from the shaman. I have 3. This could be another infirmary if I wanted. However, I didn't want them to collide, especially now that it draws. It's not like Doctor that doesn't draw. So instead, after some thought, I go for it's either a shaman or an engineer, and I decide on the engineer. Engineer has a huge scope on the board. Shaman, infirmary, menagerie, minstrel, farmhands. All of those are great targets for engineer. So I decided to get that first before getting a shaman. I would go into debt and I'd probably have a turn here with less money, so I figured now I could get the shaman. One shuffle does pass, but it'll be okay. We both have just one infirmary for trash, and I don't think my opponent is going to take a huge lead in the trashing department. We'll see. Here they also go for an engineer on 3. You see again how infirmary works. I draw a card, then I trash that card from my hand. I have 3 here. Again, could be infirmary, but now I think shaman is the way to go. Fortunately, my engineer doesn't collide with my infirmary. Earl also has 3, and I think they follow suit on shaman. So you see me there looking at Farmhands because this hand isn't great. I can't buy anything, but I can set aside the copper for next turn. The 2 reasons for doing that: one is there's some outside chance I hit 5 by having 1 coin in play, and it takes 1 card out of the deck just for a shuffle. So a little bit of pseudo trashing, as some people call it. I'm not sure how impactful that is, but I think that was the best thing to do here with the engineer. The other consideration was a minstrel, just to try to get through the deck a little bit more quickly. Maybe that's better still, but new cards, have to give it a go, see how it goes. Minstrel for my opponent instead of the farmhands, so they probably don't have anything to set aside in their hand, is why they chose to do that. In fact, they even trash the engineer to gain a second minstrel, and then they buy a menagerie. Now, I didn't like them trashing the engineer. I didn't plan to trash mine. I think there's too much scope in the kingdom for engineer to just trash it so quickly. Probably they'll buy one back, but I didn't want to get rid of mine so quickly. We'll see how the double minstrel pays off. I do get the coin in play. Infirmary trashes an estate for me. I miss 5, but I hit 4, and I'm going to use Farmhands once again to set aside an engineer, which collided with my infirmary, so that I am still able to play it on the shuffle. So far, Farmhands is doing some good work for me. Happy about that. And here my opponent goes for a second infirmary. Makes sense. I am also considering when to get a second infirmary. There with the 4 coins, that's a decent time to get it. They're guaranteed to trash at least 1 card from their hand, an estate in that case. Alright, Shaman. Notice here Shaman doesn't let me pick up the engineer because it doesn't lie in the cost range for Shaman. I think the cost range is 2 to 6. Engineer doesn't have any coin cost, it's just dead. So it was safe for Earl to trash the engineer. There's no way I could pick that up from the trash. Alright, my engineer comes out start of turn. This time I gain a minstrel. I think it's the better card now. I have a shaman that I would like to see more often. I have an engineer that I would like to see more often as well, and I'm trying to get to 5 here. Not quite sure how to do so. I don't really want to include a silver yet. Let me see if I could do it without the silver, especially with the farmhand's ability to set cards aside. Instead of the silver, I pick up a menagerie. Small chance it triggers. We'll see how it does. Again, I could set it aside if I really want to with the farmhands. Earl buys back an engineer. Takes 2 dead. Not an exciting turn for me here. Just the engineer. And I pick up another minstrel. 3 could be another engineer. I think about it. I decided to get a second shaman instead. Shaman is painful. It's painful. You have to really be on top of your trashing in shaman games. And often if shaman is the only trasher, those games go very, very long. Here, fortunately, we have a second trasher in the infirmary. Earl trashes out a card, passes it back to me. Minstrel puts the farmhands on top of the deck. I get a trash off, and here I could choose not to trigger the shuffle, but I think it's worthwhile. Shaman allows me to let the menagerie draw 3 cards, and here I thought about trashing and having 4 coin, but instead I decided not to and decided to pick up one of those tireless catacombs. The draw is going to be very, very important in this game, and I'm happy I was able to get to 5 before my opponent. The engineer comes out, they gain more minstrels and a second shaman themselves. Here we trigger the shuffle, so now we are hoping to see that catacombs very soon. 3, I don't want to buy the infirmary on 3 because I don't get any immediate value from it, so I am going to go ahead and stick with the menagerie plan here. Alright, my opponent triggers their menagerie and they keep trashing. Shaman really is slowing us down. All we've hit so far is 3 and 4, and I've been lucky to hit 5. And I see the catacombs here. It is gonna give me a little bit of development here. I'm happy my opponent still doesn't have a catacombs, so I think this is going to be a big advantage. Again, I can trigger this menagerie, and here I'm okay to trigger the menagerie because I know that the catacombs is going on top of the deck. Farmhands first so that I can put a menagerie in the shuffle that I am going to trigger. Don't see it, which is probably for the best. And 4 is going to be another minstrel. So I know in those 7 cards there is a menagerie, and I'm going to top deck a catacombs. Let's see how it works out. Sorry, not a minstrel. I feel now I can support the second engineer, so I go ahead, I buy the second engineer. Really looking to establish some pile control at this point. Alright, menagerie doesn't quite trigger here. I don't have any shaman or any other way to get rid of the copper. So we'll see what we can do. My opponent plays the engineer. They keep gaining minstrels, but they keep missing 5, unfortunately for them. I think that I have a minstrel in the bottom few cards there, and it turns out I do have a minstrel. So that is going to give me a decent turn here. Catacombs lets me keep those farmhands, and not the best hand here, but it lets me get to catacombs again, and I will take a second catacombs gladly. Now I feel very comfortable with my position because I have the 2 catacombs. I feel like I'll be able to draw most of the deck, and that combined with the menagerie should allow me to get through most, if not all, of my deck. And my opponent is still stuck with hands that just generate 2 and 3 coin. This was a better turn for them. They were able to trash 3 cards, draw off a bit with the menagerie. But I'm about to kick off here with a menagerie, and I know that catacombs is on top of the deck, so we are going forward. Hopefully I see my second catacombs here. Small chance I do, actually much bigger chance now that the shamans enable me to make this menagerie draw 3 cards. I gain the infirmary here finally, and I am going to be able to see the second catacombs, and this is great news for me. Now what this means is both catacombs will go on top of the deck, so what I want to do at this point is to stuff my deck with many villages. You see here I'm just out of actions. I don't want that to be the case, because if I'm unable to play those catacombs I lose it, then I have to spend probably a whole turn resetting the whole tireless catacombs on top of the deck. The extra villages will give me the consistency to keep those catacombs on top of the deck for the rest of the game. I'm in a very strong position, and I want to hold on to this for as long as possible. So 6 here could be gold, but instead it is going to be a farmhands, not a minstrel. Again, I'm going to use the on-gain effect to set aside the menagerie. That may not draw me 3 cards, but it will give me 2 actions to let me play one of the catacombs. Very safe play for me there. At this point now, I am actually thinking about gaining tunnels with my engineer and using minstrels to potentially trigger those. Not a great plan, honestly. I should probably just gain up here silver and build from there. But we'll see. In fact, there's not much to see because my opponent resigns. They're probably didn't have a great hand, and I just drew my deck twice in a row there. Great exhibition of Infirmary and Farmhands, not so much of Carnival because of the tireless catacombs. Look out for more second edition from Guilds and Cornucopia content in the remainder of the league though. Thanks for watching.